Dr. Oz, great to see you. I just want to bring up Italy, if I can, first, because it was mentioned today that it appears that Italy may have reached its peak. That is, the numbers of new infections and deaths are coming down a bit. Does it seem that way to you?
Well, the last 2 days have been slightly lower than prior peaks, which is good news because if the pandemic was worsening in Italy, you'd see continued increases. I mean, the kinds of things that bring fear to us is a doubling of numbers. And so if they're not doubling, it's a good sign. And if they begin to come down, it's even better. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
And it also seems, by the way, that Germany has kind of flattened that curve a bit, which is what we're all hoping to do here. So it does appear that this is an invisible enemy that we can defeat.
Well, we know we're going to defeat this pandemic anyway. No matter what happens, we will win this. I mean, in the worst case scenario, we would have won, but it would have cost us a lot more lives. I think the social distancing and the aggressive steps taken by leaders at all levels of government, I've got to applaud them because it's hard to do what they're doing, will show benefits. The question now becomes, what are the actual metrics we look for to see if it's working or not? And I was part of the press conference today, as you know, and Dr. Birx said very thoughtfully that we're not going to just focus on numbers of cases, because with all the extra testing, of course, that's going to increase. But by looking at mortalities, and we need better and more precise data there, we can begin to tell if we're heading in the right direction. I think within the next week, we'll have a pretty good gauge, which is why 15 days was the amount of time selected by the task force. And by then, we'll be able to identify for sort of directionally heading in the right spot. I was impressed that the president put a timeline out, arguing that Easter would be a nice time to come around.
What do you think about that? Do you think we could hit that note at Easter? That's when we could begin to reopen businesses and such?
Well, it's a good time for resurrection, right? And I think
sure
medically we'll have a pretty good idea. You know, I used a metaphor when I asked the president about that because I was curious what would happen if it didn't work out well. But in surgery, and I'm a surgeon, a good surgeon can tell when the surgery went well, which is what we're going through now these 2 weeks, and he can tell when the patient can go home, which again, in theory, President Trump was arguing could be Easter. But a great surgeon goes one step further. They know when you have to readmit the patient if there's a problem. So as long as we have a game plan for dealing with a slippage, you know, if we sort of go backwards, then I think we can be more aggressive in starting to loosen up the reins on America.
Now, the head of the World Health Organization, who frankly was very late to recognize the urgency of the crisis, he seemed to be a little too forgiving of China, and that may be a political reason we can get into later. But he says that it's going to get a lot worse in the United States before it gets better. What do you think of his role and his prognostications about all this?
Well, the World Health Organization, in fairness to them, has a difficult task because they're trying to wrangle all these different countries. A lot of them have very different agendas. You know, big countries, and he was arguing that the G20, the largest countries, have to play a bigger role financially in supporting some of their initiatives. But, I mean, just numerically, he's right. We're going to have more people die and more people diagnosed. Well, that doesn't take rocket scientists to figure out. Doctors can figure it out, too, like me. But the question is, are the kinds of cases we're seeing reflective of past errors or people made mistakes in social distancing or other morbidities that folks have? Or is it a reflection of the fact that the pandemic is overwhelming our systems? And the number one metric to look for, I think, is do we have enough beds in our hospitals? Do we have enough ventilators? Do we have enough protection for our staff? That's why so many of the questions today to that White House task force were fundamentally about supporting states that are in trouble. But Governor Cuomo said something very important. He said, watch and learn from what we're doing and learn, and also take cautionary notes about the things that haven't happened correctly in New York, because it could happen in your state. But think about this. If we can do what other countries have done and allow New York and California to fix the problems, supporting these states as they need to, and Washington State as well, and then we avoid similar crises in other states, that would be fabulous for all of us.
Absolutely.
Why should West Virginia have to go through what New York's going through?
Dr. Oz, final question, and it's got to be relatively short, but have you ever seen a national, really an international organization of expertise and real medical genius, not to mention the genius of companies and entrepreneurs who are thinking up ways to invent cheap respirators and things like that? I've never seen any organization like the one we have going to come to a resolution of a medical crisis before. Have you?
I haven't. It gives you goosebumps, and it reasserts the remarkable capacity of America to mobilize. And that's what we're witnessing firsthand. I wish it didn't require a crisis for us to do this, but it is reassuring we have that capacity.
And it is miraculous, some of the cures that are being come up with and the new machines, et cetera. It's very encouraging. Dr. Oz, it's always encouraging to talk to you. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Take care. God bless you.
God bless you as well. Well, we'd like to hear your thoughts on all of this. Share your comments.